Hello and welcome to the News9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News9 Plus. Record turnout for elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Civil unrest and violence in Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. 3 decades after Pakistan began its proxy war in Jammu and Kashmir, the tables have turned. And how? Just yesterday, the Supreme Court dismissed a batch of petitions seeking a review of its December 2023 order, unanimously upholding the centre's decision to abrogate Article 370. Article 370 bestowed special status on the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. What do these judgments, what do this turnout mean for the future of Jammu and Kashmir, and what's the way forward? To talk more about this, I have in the studio my colleague Aditya Raj Kaul, and joining us from Jammu and Kashmir is Javed Baigh, social activist. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Aditya, tell us what we just saw in Jammu and Kashmir over the last couple of days. The dichotomy in the two regions of Kashmir, one on our side of the border, the other in Pakistan, and the fact that democracy is the best revenge, as Benazir Bhutto once said very famously.
Well, over the last few days or weeks, we have seen something very unprecedented. Something that 5 years ago we wouldn't have imagined is happening either in the Indian Kashmir or the Pakistan Occupied Kashmir.
Right.
First, to begin with, I would say that the central government, the Parliament of India and the Supreme Court of India finally nullifying completely Article 370 clearly indicates the will of the people of India has been expanded to Jammu and Kashmir and has been implemented fully. Now, no political party, no political leader, activist or a human rights group can really come in and say that democratic means were not used. Every possible democratic mechanism was used to nullify Article 370 from Jammu and Kashmir. And those who say that 370 was just a thing that was kept there, it was not implemented, and we could have ignored it completely. No, Article 370, even if it's just narrative, has helped immensely change the ground. Not in respect of terrorism completely or violence completely, but in the mindset of the Kashmiri people, because the grassroots democracy has found weight in Jammu and Kashmir for the first time. We see unprecedented, in Baramulla, just a couple of days back, we've had 59% polling. In Mumbai, we had 56%. Can you imagine that?
Baramulla outstripping Mumbai in voting turnouts. And I want to ask this to Javed. He joins us from Srinagar. Javed, tell us how historic this moment we're witnessing that Aditya just mentioned. Baramulla, seeing a higher turnout than all of Mumbai. What's the mood on the ground right now, 5 years after Article 370 being repudiated and after these historic elections, the first elections in Jammu and Kashmir after 2019?
As Aditya Bhai rightly said, two sides of Jammu and Kashmir. One, our Jammu and Kashmir, Indian Jammu and Kashmir, another Pakistan Occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Nobody across undivided Jammu and Kashmir would have ever imagined what will happen in this part of Jammu and Kashmir and Pakistan Occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
The tables have turned very clearly.
As Aditya Bhai rightly said, more than 59% voter turnout across Baramulla. And let me tell you, northern Kashmir comes with Soibug in my district, Padgam, Patan Polhalan in Baramulla, and Hajin in Bandepura, which were once upon a time hotbed militancy.
Yes, hotbeds of
violence
militancy.
all across. But in last 5 years, what has actually changed is the mansikta of common Kashmiri, especially the mansikta of Kashmiri youth. The mindset of Kashmiri youth has become so strong and global that Kashmiri youth have now started representing the idea of India globally.
Absolutely.
This is the change.
This is a huge change. And in fact,
I am not excited about 60% voting. That was bound to happen. Because people of my generation have understood two sides of Kashmir. We are very much aware what is happening to our Riyasatis in PoK, in POGB, and how Kashmiris are leading 1.4 billion Indians. I am proudly saying that first Honorable PM of Azad Hind was a Kashmiri.
Right.
I am proudly saying that Honorable Home Minister of Azad Hind was a
Yes.
Kashmiri, Mufti Muhammad Sayyid Saab.
Yes.
A Kashmiri can top India's most prestigious exam, but a Kashmiri on other side
Right.
cannot even have rights to have atta and chawal.
Yes,
A
absolutely.
Kashmiri living under the illegal occupation of Pakistani Punjabi Muslim elites
Yes.
cannot even go out of Gilgit and Baltistan,
Right.
or cannot enter without a permission to enter his home in Gilgit and Baltistan.
Yes, absolutely.
This is the difference.
Very, very important points there, Javed. And Aditya, now my next question to you would be, what next in Jammu and Kashmir? Assembly elections, how early can it be held? I mean, I'm sure these turnouts would have encouraged the government to start thinking about assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Of course, there would be statehood first and then the election, but just run us through what's on the agenda next.
You know, two questions are very often asked to me after the
Right.
abrogation of Article 370.
Right.
One is, when will democracy be restored,
Right.
and when will the assembly elections happen?
Yes.
And the second question is that when will Kashmiri Hindus return to Kashmir?
Right.
You know, to the first, I
Yes.
say that there is a step-by-step restoration of democracy that is happening.
Yes.
And there is a step-by-step attack
Right.
on the Hawala networking, on the
Yes.
terror networks, on
Right.
the corruption, on the kind of radicalization that has been underway there. NIA especially,
Yes.
along with the Jammu and Kashmir police and the SIA, have significantly contributed to this change
Yes.
from 2017 onwards.
Right.
We saw a lot of radical separatists, people from Hurriyat, JKLF,
Yes.
Jamaat-e-Islami, and all these groups who instigated violence in the valley have been arrested.
Right.
All these ringleaders are in Tihar jail or
Yes.
other jails in Agra, Lucknow and other places. So there is no question of any kind of violence after the Friday prayers or
Yes.
whenever there's an encounter that's underway.
Right. And the money the networks have been disrupted. The
Almost
Hawala,
to 90%. There, there might be some still underway through
Right.
different mechanisms, but mostly they have been crushed completely.
Yes.
And it's visible in the valley. No stone
Right.
pelting that
Right.
was visible before 2019
Yes.
is there anymore. So I personally feel that the state assembly elections may not happen immediately.
Right.
It
Okay.
may take a little more time because now they have tested the waters
Yes.
after the parliamentary elections,
Right.
which is the biggest election.
Right.
So they will tell the Supreme Court of India, because
Yes.
September is the deadline,
Yeah.
that we have had successful elections.
Right.
And now perhaps we will go for the panchayati elections, block development elections as well.
Yes.
And thereafter go for the assembly polls.
Right.
One significant thing that has transpired post 2019 after the reorganization bill was introduced
Yes.
was the Jammu and Kashmir police coming under the MHA.
Right.
I personally feel, because I've observed the security situation there,
Right.
that this is even more important than Article 370 nullification.
Right.
That Jammu and Kashmir police should always remain with the MHA
Right.
and shouldn't be with the chief minister.
Yes.
If it is with the state government, we will be back to square one.
Right.
And second, to the return of the Kashmiri Hindus, there is a societal change that needs to happen.
Yes.
The local Kashmiris don't know how to live with Hindus or with Sikhs or others.
It hasn't happened in 30 years.
It
They've
hasn't
been-
happened for
Yes.
almost 40 years now.
Yeah.
So it will take time.
Right.
I'm not saying that Kashmiri Hindus may not return,
Yes.
because they've settled abroad and they don't want to go into a violence or
Right.
terror-related area. But you need to bring a change at the
Right.
societal level.
Right.
For instance, people like Yasin Malik and Bitta Karate and others who
Yes.
have been languishing in jail,
Right.
were not even in jail, they were living a luxurious life,
Yes.
need to be tried, tested, and in fact, completely as per the law of India,
Yeah.
given
Dealt
punishment.
with as
And
per the law. Right.
These acts will act as a precedent,
Right.
motivating the common Indians, not
Yes.
just Kashmiri Pandits, but people all across India,
Right.
to visit Kashmir more. Tourism will increase,
Yes.
and perhaps there will be intermingling of ties, and Kashmiri Hindus will also realize and perhaps return someday.
Right, absolutely. We're looking forward to that day. But Javed, I want to ask you about this question that I asked Aditya as well. The fact that assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir, do you believe that there is, given the fact that the Lok Sabha elections have been conducted so peacefully, there was record turnouts, that now the next step would be to first have the Zila Parishad elections and then possibly the assembly elections. How critical do you think it is to hold these in the next couple of months? Or do you think the time is still not right for that?
Constitutional bench of Honorable Supreme Court has already given directions
Yes.
to Election Commission of India that assembly elections in J&K should be held as early as before September 2024.
Right.
Which I'm sure, because the way Election Commission of India conducted Lok Sabha with the help of Jammu and Kashmir Police and other security agencies is phenomenal. I appreciate Jammu and Kashmir Police. Not a single incident of violence across Srinagar, Pulwama, Badgam, Baramulla and Kapwa.
Right.
Such a peaceful environment this was. Luckily, I was also in this whole process. I went around Baramulla and Srinagar, including Pulwama. The enthusiasm, on the faces of Kashmiris, especially on youth, that was something to be cherished for a longer time.
Yes.
I'm sure Election Commission of India will take an early call for assembly elections, and hopefully a new leadership will emerge, as Aditya Bhai rightly said, one thing at a time. A lot of things
step by step
done, very positive things, but a lot of things need to be done, like early and dignified return of my Kashmiri Pandit brothers. Without that, I won't say it is Naya Kashmir. When last Kashmiri Pandit or Kashmiri Muslim who is not living in Kashmir, out of that fear of 90s, they should return to Valley, especially my Kashmiri Pandit community. Then that is in real sense Naya Kashmir. But situation has changed, peace has returned. Development is taking place.
Development is taking place, absolutely.
At far-flung areas. I'm very happy.
Right. Javed, important point there, no Naya Kashmir without the return of the Kashmiri Pandits. Aditya, not a lot of people know the fact that there are 24 seats in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly reserved for Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. This has been the case for several decades now. Given the fact that the government has been so vociferously talking about Pakistan Occupied Kashmir, do you see the possibility of these seats, them actually announcing candidates for these seats?
I don't see a possibility in immediate future, but that's an excellent idea. In fact, I have written a couple of times that the government shouldn't keep them vacant as a symbolic gesture. They should immediately think, because those people who have come from across the border, they are part of the Indian society, they're part of the Indian constitution, and they have the same rights after the nullification of Article 370. Why not give them rights? Why not create some kind of constituencies or give them, nominate them at least, and have their say at least, even if there are people in exile who are interested to be part of this process, at least to a certain extent under the Indian ambit of Indian constitution, that should be done. In fact, Sandeep, I have a question for Javed. Javed,
please.
You spoke about this new leadership that needs to emerge in Kashmir. You have been, on the other side a few years ago, and now you are part of this Indian democratic process over the last 5 years. Tell us the kind of change that you have seen, because, we still see Farooq Abdullah, Umar Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti speak about that Modi should speak to Pakistan. They say, even they have atomic bomb, they can attack us. Do you think this kind of narrative of autonomy, self-rule, this kind of separatism, this should end? There should be a new politics done by NC, PDP and all these political parties?
Aditya, let me make it very clear. I have never been on the other side of politics. I have always been into mainstream. Though there were some differences between different parties I was associated with, but I have always been on the side of mainstream. I have always advocated for idea of India since my childhood, and I will always advocate for the idea of India. I am a radical advocate of idea of India, you can say. Yes, there has been a drastic change since last 5 years. People like me who live in far-flung areas in Kashmir were always apprehensive of being targeted by radical elements or militants. But now, I don't have that kind of fear. Or people who again advocate for the idea of India are not under any kind of fear now. This is the change. Earlier there was a different kind of environment. Now situation has changed. I can speak my heart out anywhere across Jammu and Kashmir. I can talk to my people with the ideology I believe in. Earlier it was a different scenario. Even if you believed in the idea of India, you wouldn't dare to speak about it openly. Political parties, regional or sub-regional parties, they used Article 370, 35A
Right.
for their benefits, for their political benefits.
Yes.
I haven't seen these articles benefiting 1.2 million people of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, the way people are getting benefited by central government schemes is something which not only Javed Baigh, Aditya Raj Kaul Saab, every single Kashmiri is talking about,
Absolutely.
appreciating.
Javed, thank you very much for your thoughts, but I'm completely out of time here. But Naya Kashmir, and there's no Naya Kashmir without the return of the Kashmiri Pandits and indeed all the Kashmiri Muslims who've been displaced as well. Important points here in our show today evening about how the tables have turned in Jammu and Kashmir in just about 3 decades, where you had violence on the one hand and peace on the other. Today, it is a Naya Kashmir heading towards peace and development. Thank you very much, Javed, for joining us. And Aditya Raj Kaul, this is a story that we keep tracking because it's so close to us. National security, Jammu and Kashmir, bullets and ballots. The West has pumped in billions of dollars of weaponry into Taiwan to prevent Xi Jinping's potential invasion of the island. China claims Taiwan a renegade province, and US intelligence sources believe President Xi could invade as early as 2027. And now comes a report that TSMC and ASML, the world's largest chip makers, will disable chip making equipment if China were to invade. Joining me to talk about this scenario are Anurag Avasthi, Vice President, Indian Electronics and Semiconductor Association, and my colleague Amit Ranjan. Colonel Avasthi, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Hello,
Likewise,
Sandeep.
Amit. How significant is this report? You know, the TSMC president has said in the past that nobody can control TSMC by force. If there's a military invasion, they will render the TSMC factory non-ops.
Let me start with, a very, very important thing insofar as, these reports have, have come, and they are amongst a number of them on a major amount of portals in the media today. But I find it, they are just technological solutions as part of non-kinetic measures for a future conflict.
Right.
That is how I would essentially rate them.
Right.
And it's a part of the new chip wars, and
Right.
be that as it may, that's the way it is. But Sandeep, it's not a very new phenomenon.
Right.
If you go back into history and we go back to the summer of 1941 and we look at Barbarossa,
Yes.
of when the Russians were getting essentially invaded by the Nazi Germany.
Yes.
You saw the entire Russian defense establishment and the defense machinery and the defense infrastructure shifting towards the east of the Urals. That
Absolutely.
is one.
Yes.
Second, it's not a very not known thing that when the Allies got into Kuwait,
Yes.
you saw the Saddam Hussein's forces retreating back into Iraq by putting in almost of the oil wells on fire.
Yes, absolutely.
If I'm not
700
wrong,
oil wells on fire. Amit Ranjan, you
Yes,
remember that?
yes.
You were in college at that time.
Yes.
The 700,
Yes.
those visuals of 700
visuals,
blazing oil wells. But it's interesting you should mention the oil wells, Anurag, because data is the new oil. And here we are talking about, oil wells. And here, of course, Taiwan being the foundry of the world with chips. But, explain to us, the lay public, how can you simply switch off a factory and, make it difficult for, say, China to use it to make chips? Because Taiwan is like 90% of the world's 5 nm chips are made in Taiwan.
Oh. Right, Sandeep, see, I will first, give you a small little expose as to what are we talking, frankly.
Right.
ASML in the world has the monopoly over the EUV or the extreme UV machines.
Yes.
It has monopoly over them.
Right.
Now, the argument is not that why, in a conflict that ASML will switch off remotely these machines, in Taiwan so that,
Right.
nobody can use them and so on and so forth. But you
Right.
tell me one thing, why is not ASML looking at switching off these machines in China itself? There are some
Right.
machines in China.
Yes.
We've heard of Huawei.
Right.
So the anti-rhetoric is that why are you looking only at Taiwan? The ASMLs also should look at shutting off these machines in China. That's
Right.
one.
Right.
Right. The second thing is when we look at these, they're not very small entities. The
Right.
EUV machines are as much of a size of a city bus.
Yes.
Actually,
Right.
Now, all of them, they require regular maintenance.
Right.
They require regular servicing and they require updates. Like a phone
Yes.
requires an update. It requires an update.
Right.
So to remotely disabling them is a
Yes.
possibility. It is an absolute possibility.
Right.
There's
You
no
have a
doubt on
kill
that.
switch that they can remotely disable it with.
Yeah. Yes, but they're pulling up that proverbial kill switch, Sandeep.
Yes.
Now, it would be possibly counterproductive. And for a simple reason, it's a double-edged sword.
Yes.
I mean, then it is totally rendered useless, right?
Right. Right.
So also, you have to also understand 2, 3 very important things. ASML, when you look at ASML,
Yes.
it is the most valued tech stock in Europe with a
Yes.
market capitalization of 370 billion US dollars. Look at the behemoth that it is.
Absolutely. Yes.
And also, that ASML also has a EUV, that is the lithographic machines,
Yes.
tech training center in Thailand and Taiwan itself.
Right.
So they already have a facility there. Now, when you look at the EUV machines essentially are the machines that most people say that they have saved Moore's law.
Right.
If you look at it, right?
Yes.
They are the ones which make the intricate patterns on the silicon wafers for the
Yes.
world's most advanced microchips, which you just mentioned.
Right.
So you look at this quagmire, but the whole idea is that if ASML can disable those, machines in TSMC in Taiwan,
Yes.
why can't the same thing be done onto these machines in China, which it already has? They may be of an older vintage or
Yes,
generation,
yes, but they could
can
do the
be done
same
there,
in
right?
China as well. When one doesn't know in a war, all bets are off. But
Absolutely.
speaking of the chip wars, Amit Ranjan, this is a story that you've been tracking very closely. What would be the potential impact of a Chinese invasion on Taiwan?
Like pointed out, 90% of chips are made in Taiwan.
Yes.
Just a fear of an invasion
Yes.
last year halted supply of motor vehicles in India.
Yes.
So that is the volume of disruption we are looking at if
Right.
something happens to China.
Yes.
Two, the double-edged sword that Huawei has an older version of this EUV that is 2 years old, because since 2 years the embargo has
There's an
come
embargo
into
on
play
China,
that
yes.
no EUVs are being sold by ASML to. They have an older version and they have imported more technology from 2 other players from Taiwan
Yes.
to build something that is rivaling Apple right now,
Right.
Huawei.
Right.
So they have their upgrades.
Yes.
Why they are not disabling them? Because they are the biggest clients. They are
Yeah.
370 in market capitalization,
Right.
It's double of Intel, which
Right.
is the most popular brand name
Right.
in microchips.
Right.
That is one. One of these costs about $217 million.
Yes.
Just one of these. So
Right.
the disruption is going to be huge.
The
You can't just
disruption is
basically
going to be huge. But I'm going to ask
And-
Anurag Avasthi this question.
Just last point.
Yes.
That
yes.
is why a shift in the supply chain
Right.
is what President Joe Biden is initiating,
Yes.
with 39 billion
Right.
being pledged for microchip manufacture on US soil.
Yes.
And all of Southeast Asia, India including, is doing these sorts of things. in
Everyone's trying
smaller
to
measure.
de-risk.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, what were they thinking of, citing 90% of the world's chip making at China's doorstep, over the last 3 decades? I mean, this has to be one of the most catastrophic strategic mistakes of all time, post the Second World War. But I have to ask Anurag Avasthi this question. Anurag, you're a military man, you were a military man, and now you are into policy, into advocacy. You're a key member of our, a semiconductor mission in India. Does Xi Jinping really care whether Taiwan has chips or not? I don't think his plans, indeed China's plans to capture Taiwan, hinge on the fact that they have chips. He's going to go there regardless of whether they switch the machines off or they don't. So do you think all of this actually is kind of, they're only adding to this whole thing of, making Taiwan more, unattractive for an invasion?
Okay. Now, Sandeep, I have a different theory insofar as this is concerned.
Right.
Firstly, I can't get into Xi Jinping's mind. That is one.
Yes.
The second thing is, it's not very easy to, get into this invasion dynamics with Taiwan.
Yes.
Firstly, it is not littoral. Okay.
Right, right.
So it requires warfare in all 3, maybe 4 dimensions insofar
Yes.
as, Taiwan is concerned, and especially with that famous silicon shield,
Yes.
which is being talked about. That is 2. Thirdly, the issue at hand is, will there be a conflict between China and Taiwan? Does it suit Xi Jinping?
Right.
That is one.
Of
Because
course.
Taiwan is also sending a lot of, there's a lot of Taiwanese and Chinese trade. In fact,
Yes.
China is the largest trading partner of Taiwan.
Right.
We shouldn't gloss over this fact.
Yes.
And then when you're looking at, the cross trades trade or
Yes.
the cross trade and investment, there's a large amount of investment of the Taiwanese inside the Chinese mainland,
Yes.
and reciprocally. So does this augur well for a conflict? And along with that, you're aware of the double ring of fire that we've already talked about
Yes.
much earlier, insofar
Right.
as the earthquakes and the other things are concerned. And does all of this fit into the entire gamut of an invasion? So that remains to be seen.
Yes.
So I have a personal view that invasion is not not very easy insofar as the execution or prosecution of operations is concerned, and B, I think with so much of money at stake and so much of trade at stake between the
Yes.
two countries, I think sense and sensibility will not make it a very full-blown kind of a conflict.
Oh,
but these are my
absolutely.
two views on the subject.
Absolutely, very important point there, and the fact that sense and sensibility could finally prevail and deter a potential invasion of Taiwan, and it wouldn't be those chip-making machines that have been turned off, because that's not such a big deal. But the fact
the world
that
may not allow it, because
Yes.
90% is there.
90% of the world's chips flow out of Taiwan. But thank you very much for joining us this evening, Anurag Avasthi and my colleague Amit Ranjan. Russia's President Vladimir Putin rarely travels abroad. That's understandable. He's fighting Europe's longest war since the Second World War. But when President Putin flies, he does it in style. Russia's Air Force One, a specially modified 4-engine Ilyushin IL-96-300, which is also an airborne command post, is his aircraft of choice. And here's the other thing. He flies with an escort of 4 Sukhoi 35 fighter jets. He flew in similar fashion into the UAE last December. Now, the Su-35 is a single-seat version of the Su-27 aircraft, and the Indian Air Force's Su-30 is a variant of the Su-27. But what's Putin's Air Force One like, and what will these fighter jets around him do? Joining me to discuss this are Air Marshal V.K. Bhatia and my colleague Justin Thomas. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Air Marshal Bhatia, President Putin flying in style in Russia's Air Force One, flanked by 4 fighter jets. Tell us why fighter jets, and what would be the role of these fighter aircraft escorting Russia's Air Force One?
Thank you. It's a very nice question. First of all, within your own country, perhaps you could do it.
Right.
But when you're going abroad,
Yes.
the question of taking a fighter escort does not arise.
Right.
I would like to mention here that all VIP aircraft, modern VIP aircraft,
Yes.
what Putin flies, for example,
Right.
or what our Prime Minister and President fly,
Yes.
they are equipped with what we
Right.
call self-protection systems.
Yes.
So when they go abroad,
Right.
do not have a fighter escort
Right.
going all the way with them.
Right.
It's necessary.
Right.
First of all, the most important thing is what is the airspace that you're flying in?
Yes.
If you are flying, let us say, over hostile airspace
Right.
for some reason,
Right.
then in all probability a VIP aircraft would avoid that airspace.
Right.
It wouldn't go into that airspace. But this question of fighter aircraft escorting
Right.
a VIP aircraft all the way to their destination
Yes.
is something new that I have heard.
Right. Air Marshal
not
Bhatia, we are looking at the visuals. In fact, if we could show you that visual of President Putin landing in the UAE last December in style with this IL Air Force One, flanked by 4 Su-35s. And we have given to understand that this is the same configuration that he is going to choose when he lands in Tehran just tomorrow. But, just to understand...
Sandeep, can I add just one thing in that?
Yes, Justin, let me finish. What do you think would be the configuration of this fighter escort if you're flying such a long range thing? Because it's Moscow to Tehran would be over 3,000 kilometers, and you're going to be flying, of course, over the Russian Federation territory and then over the Caspian Sea possibly. What would be the aircraft fitted out for? What are the kind of threats that they would be equipped with?
You see, basically, all these fighter escorts are done for what we call as a sort of a show.
Right.
It is not for security reasons.
Yes.
All VIP aircraft, they have self-protection systems.
Right.
And fighters normally do not have that kind of range if they're going long distances.
Yes.
But it's question of you have just given an example that is landing tomorrow at Tehran
Right.
with an escort. This may be for a particular occasion.
Yes.
And Tehran is not very far from Russia.
Right.
And these aircraft do not have to take off from Moscow itself. They
Yes.
could
Yes.
join the presidential
Right.
plane at a later stage from a southern part of the country.
Absolutely.
So that it's arranged to be able
Right.
to fly up.
So it'll be a short hop from the southern Russian part into Tehran, which would be not 3,000 kilometers, but a couple of hundred kilometers. Justin, you had a point. You've been looking at
in fact,
President Putin very
that
closely.
video is pretty interesting. You know
Yes.
why? Because in that video, you can see the 4 Su-35.
Yes.
And along with it, there's one more jet, the 5th one, which is
Right.
provided by the Iranian Air Force.
Right.
And interestingly, that's an American aircraft,
Right.
F-14 Tomcat, which
Right.
was used in Vietnam War and after that.
And
okay?
of course in Tom Cruise's Top Gun in 1986.
Exactly. So that's why it's very interesting because
Yeah.
while he's having his own force, there's an American jet also escorting,
Right.
which is the biggest big irony in that video in itself.
Yeah, actually, interesting point. An F-14, an Iranian, former Islamic Iranian Air Force F-14 escorting President Putin's aircraft while it crossed Iranian airspace.
That's right.
And flew into the UAE. But there's also another interesting point, Justin, since you're talking about Su-35s. The Su-35 is an aircraft, like I mentioned, it's an upgraded version of the Su-27. The IAF's Su-30s are also modified variants of the Su-27. That's an aircraft that Russia has been trying to sell to Iran for a couple of years now. And Air Marshal Bhatia, you're aware of this, the fact that the Su-35 has been an aircraft that the Iranian Air Force wants to, buy for a couple of years ever since it came out of the sanctions, and especially now, as payment for the drones that Iran has been supplying the Russian Federation during its Russia-Ukraine war. Could this Su-35 flight of these 4 aircraft be a showpiece as well for Russia to tell the Iranian Air Force that, look, this is the aircraft that you absolutely must have in your Air Force?
I think it's being done most to provide some sort of a show.
Right.
Yes, I can understand if the Su-35s are escorting the Russian president
Yes.
all the way to Tehran.
Right.
It is a part of a show that they're doing. In all probability, they'll land there and they will also be looked into. But the main thing is, we are talking about, one is to do something for a spectacle.
Right.
The other one is that you're doing it for safety.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that VIP aircraft,
Yes.
when they fly long distances, they do not carry fighter aircraft as escorts
Right.
for safety.
Right.
This could be basically to give some sort of a show element in the Iranian airspace and in Tehran.
A show element, and Justin, Putin is one for show, and he's a showman.
And also
quite a
the
showman.
fact that he's paranoid as well. Okay,
Yes.
let's also get into that fact also.
Right.
I mean, he travels in an armored train like his counterpart in North Korea.
Yes.
And he has his own bunkers.
Yes.
He doesn't use mobile phones. He doesn't use
Right.
internet. So all this adds up to that persona
mystique
of that
around
person. Yes,
President
around
Putin.
President Putin.
Yes.
And this is another manifestation of that.
Right.
It's clearly while he's traveling, because he can't travel much anyways.
Yes.
Because he's a he's a war crime. He's been declared that. So all these adds up. So wherever he's traveled, he got the opportunity. He's making sure that everyone notices it.
Everyone notices it. And he recently traveled to China, but did he fly in with a fighter escort? I don't think he did. It was a regular.
I don't think so, because it's just a hop across the border, and they're very well, anyways, good neighbors.
Yeah, they're good neighbors. They have land borders. They probably drove down across the border. But here in Tehran, I'm sure he'd want to make a statement, an announcement, and what better way to do it than with an IL-96, flanked with a escort of 4 fighter jets. But Air Marshal Bhatia, the aircraft, Putin's Air Force One, the IL aircraft. It's a 4-engine, twin-bodied, wide-bodied commercial jet. It's specially modified. There's something in it called the PU, the 300, it's called IL-96 PU. And PU apparently stands for Command Point. Is the command point something like what the Air Force One of the United States is? It's an airborne command post from where he can control, say, the launch of nuclear weapons?
It could be that as well, because all nuclear power,
Yes.
you'll find, especially Russia and USA,
Right.
who actually, we all know, were at a stage of Cold War for many years,
Yes.
many decades, where the presidential aircraft would carry the system by which a nuclear strike could take place. In the
Right.
sense, the orders could be given for
Yes.
a nuclear.
Right.
But that is only at that time. Right? Right now, the Cold War is over.
Right.
And they may be carrying this, but I know that the Indian VIP aircraft, for
Yes.
example, they do not carry fighter escorts.
Right.
They do not carry these things with them because it is not needed.
Yes.
But what they have is a self-protection system.
Absolutely.
So all these aircraft, I mean, talking about the VIP aircraft,
Yes.
which large countries
Yes.
have, which can afford it,
Right.
and India is one of them, where you can, you have the adequate self-protection systems
Yes.
to make sure that your aircraft is protected.
Right. So, Air Marshal Bhatia, just explain for the benefit of our viewers what these self-protection suites would consist of. We are aware of what the US Air Force One has, and in fact, even Prime Minister Modi's Air India One, we are aware of the kind of systems that they have. But little is known about President Putin's IL-96 Air Force One. Could you tell us what kind of self-protection suite it would have in terms of electronic warfare or, counter measures and flares and, missiles and the like?
Well, yes, it has actually a mix of all these.
Right.
So you have the counter measure defense systems where, you protect yourself
Yes.
from any incoming threat. So they have what you call, you just now mentioned, that they have a system where you can, protect yourself by throwing in these flares and so on and so forth.
Right.
As also electronic system to be able to safeguard their own self. So they have these systems. One is the CMDS, as we call, countermeasure defense systems,
Right.
which consists of this entire thing, which includes flares, which can include these, various things to avoid, or shall we say, the incoming missiles, if there are any, to
Yes.
be able to to be able to repel them.
So, President Putin's Air Force One landing in Tehran a few hours from now, of course, all eyes will be on that spectacle to see whether he's accompanied by 4 or more fighter jets like he did the last time during his visit to the UAE. But thanks very much for throwing light on this, Air Marshal Bhatia, on Putin's Air Force One, and of course, my colleague Justin Thomas, who's delved deep into the mind of President Putin, the showman president of Russia. Thanks for watching.